And now for something completely different.
Hey, thanks for joining me again this week. I'm a day late on releasing the video. It's getting released on Monday instead of Sunday because this little monster decided to have a ruptured disc in her neck, which was causing her to walk very poorly. She's dragging her feet, so we got a surprise surgery Thursday. So needless to say, it has been a little bit of a hectic week. So anyways, so this week we're going to have part 2 of the room tour. So of course, you know what this scene is. It's Luke and R2 meeting Yoda for the first time on Dagobah. October 2017, I believe, was when the Yoda was released, and that's about the ballpark whenever I started this diorama. Took a little while to do because I was just doing it in my spare time. But anyway, just having the Yoda inspired the thought process of doing this. One of the huge factors for me, and you'll see in the making of video that I'm about to show you, is how tiny the accessories that came with Yoda are. The fusion furnace and this box right here were just way too small, underscaled. So here is the video of the making of my custom Dagobah diorama. Okay, so first up I had to find the exact moment that I wanted to portray in the Dagobah scenes. So I came up with this scene right here, right where he pulls the blaster on Yoda, and Yoda says, "Wait, put your weapon, I mean you no harm." So from there I started to block out exactly what the layout might look like as far as scale, how close or far away the figures had to set. Started out with the box that you see here, which is his supply, I guess, toolbox. This is, again, styrene, polystyrene. Fabrication comes in sheets. You can buy it in tubes, rods. This angle iron you see here I used to reinforce the joints on any of the boxes that you see. So fabricated him, and there you see I'd set it in the background just to make sure the scale was kind of appropriate to what I wanted. Use this tool here to cut smaller pieces of styrene square, and as you can see it angles, so you can cut 45s or any degree in between. So this is the radio that sits on top of that same box there. I call it radio, I don't know what it is, but first attempt here, and I was not happy with it. I was comparing to the photos in the actual scene, the screen caps, and just wasn't right. Too fat. So I started again. The scale on the right and the shape on the right is more appropriate, and I ended up coming up with this, which I was much more happy with, and threw the one on the right in the garbage. Next up was the box you see in the front left that the fusion furnace is setting on. A little bit more complex. This would be my most daunting thing to tackle to date. Here you see the same box. This is in the levitation scene. So cut up the individual pieces. So if you look back at that box, it is not square. It is angled. So I had to taper the lid and the bottom. There's a solvent that melts the styrene. So basically you put the angle there, you apply it's like acetone, I think, basically, and it melts the styrene, and it's actually stronger than the styrene is. So as you notice in the top, there are pretty good gaps going on. So what you do is you take the polystyrene and you melt it in that bonding agent, and it makes a milky dissolved liquid form of the styrene, and then you can paint it into the joints, and then after you sand it you get something that looks like this. This is unsanded at this point, but you can see it fills in the gap. It's kind of like Bondo on a car. So lots of sanding, starting to add the little ridge doolies around the side, the structure of it. This is the base. So I cut out the slots in the bottom, and then if you see inside the lid there, then I put a piece of styrene on the inside and attached so that it makes the slotted groove effect of the base bottom. The stick out parts there are way too far out, so I took a Dremel and sanded them down to appropriate size. Next up is the lid. Taking strips of styrene and layering various sizes to get the ridged roof look. Again, where it's not flush on the end, you just use the dissolved styrene. You can see the bonding agent in the top right there. Comparing the unpainted version to the original, just making sure I liked what everything looked like. As you can see, it's a faux hinge there. Just put, actually not functional, but separates. Pretty cool. And here it is showing the scale of the original box versus what is actually there. All right, moving on to the next box here that you see. Same fabrication process, lid and base. And once again, cutting the slots and putting the piece on the inside to make the grooved effect. Again, floating styrene and sanding the edges to make, so you've got the grooves there, so you can either build up or you can build down. So I thought that cutting the slots throughout would weaken the structure way too much. So I chose to build the box and then build the ridges to where it was stronger that way. So I'm building up to make the grooves instead of etching out. And a comparison of what came with Yoda versus what the proper scale is. And as you can see, it is ridiculously underscaled with the Yoda, but it is what it is. It's a cool feature to have. Next up is the Plain Jane toolbox. This is the one that Luke actually set his food tray on in the scene right before Yoda appears. So again, this one's a little bit more simplistic design, but I thought let's step it up one notch and let's make a functional hinge for it. So it literally hinges, although no one will ever see that except for you seeing it in this video right now. But just had to do it. It works. Added the side handles, which you can only see briefly in one scene. So many of these things, as you'll see coming up for all the tools, you literally only see them for like a microsecond, and so it's very difficult and very dark to try to make out exactly what all is in the scene. Stacking all the boxes. The one that's painted blue is actually slightly underscaled, but I wasn't gonna go back and do it again. It is what it is. And on to paint. Once I was happy with everything, as usual, you start with a very dark base coat, and then you keep layering in lighter and lighter to get the patinaed. If you've ever seen one of these type toolboxes that they use, if it sits in the sun, it gets this milky white chalky appearance on it, and you can see that in the movie stills. So just kept playing around with paint until I got something that I thought approximated what that looks like. The dark splotches are a watered down black base paint that just basically a wash. You just keep applying and dabbing to dry it out until it gives the dirty, worn in thing that Star Wars is known for, a quote unquote lived in universe. So moving on, as I said, you get brief flashes of the various tools that Luke has. The thing in his right hand, I'm pretty sure is a Dremel tool, one of the old corded Dremel tools. I have no idea what the thing in his left hand is originally. I'm gonna guess some sort of a drill, like a dentist drill or something that they used, and they just painted them white. So here's the thing that was in his left hand, or my interpretation of it. And the little Dremel tool thing he had in his right. There was actually two of them in this scene. Both of them together, properly scaled. Briefly, he held this thing, and it's so dark in the scene you can't really tell what it is, so I just kind of did the best I could with my imagination of what it might be. This was actually up in the box, as was this piece. Looks like some sort of car part or something. I'm not sure what it is. This sets on top of the toolbox by the little blue lamp. Here it is painted, and I used a dry brush silver to kind of give it a distressed, worn-in look. And here's all the goodies. You had 2 square gold things in the bottom, all those couple things, the gray thing sitting on top of that. Cut up a t-shirt, rolled it up, bound it with some small zip ties. I have no idea what it's supposed to be in the movie, but replicated what it kind of looked like. The Dremel tool type thing sitting on a black device, not sure what that is. And once again, you see the 2 small hand tools that he has on the setting up on the box at the top. Here we have a black and white scene of this one I used a lot to try to reference what was up in the toolbox there, because you can't see it in other scenes. You can see the Dremel type device that he has in his hand. And then my favorite part of the entire diorama is the fusion furnace. That one was one I was kind of excited to tackle and dreading to tackle because I knew it was going to be a task. Lots of detail. First of all, started out with cutting out the circles, slightly larger than the acrylic tube that I used for the center. Here you can already tell the scale, the difference. Just following photos to try to get some idea of how to build the structure of this thing. A lot of trial and error. Here you can see him referencing pictures in the background, everything I could find of even fan-made versions or blueprints or whatever, to try to see what the structure of this thing, how I might replicate it. Here you see the Just Plug LEDs. I actually used 2 of them. They're called nano lights. Once again, the gumball machine containers make an appearance for the lid of it. And in the back you can see Mandy in 2017 with a cone of shame. So always something with the dogs. Start layering the top. The lid of this thing is very intricate. As you can see here, it took a lot of time getting this dude right. AB versus Yoda's. It's my mini-me.
I shall call him Mini-Me.
Once again, you see the detail starting to take shape. And first paint job, again layering. You got black, a dark charcoal gray, and then hitting with like a dry brush to bring out the silver accents. Next up, we've got these coil springy things, which are actually the scientific term for it, coil springy things. So I'm like, okay, how am I going to do this? I'm going to do this taking a coat hanger and wrapping bare copper wire around it, and then I cut it to length and bend it, and voila, springy coil things, or coil springy things, or whatever I said. Clear tubes are, I'm doing air quotes, you can't see. Clear tubes are just acrylic rod that I heated with a heat gun to form to the pipe tubes on this outside. I'm guessing they're probably like surgical tubes in the actual prop. And so I literally still paused in the middle of the movie, and I was like, that is a guitar plug. I'm a guitar player myself, and I was like, it's hilarious. Of all the times I've watched this, I've never noticed that that's a guitar plug plugged into R2. Here we have, and I'm demonstrating how I made the guitar cord, much like the coils. You do not want to use stranded wire that has a little bitty strands of wire in it. You want to use solid core wire, and the thinnest you can find, because it'll retain shape. So wrap it around the coat hanger in this type of fashion, and then you can take the slack out by twisting it. Then when you pull it off of the coat hanger, here's what you got. Guitar cord. Then I fabricated a polystyrene guitar plug, and it literally will plug into the bass. And here you see the Yoda accessory compared to mine. I think it was maybe just a slight improvement. And here's everything painted. Alright, so next up we plugged into R2. The problem is R2, as it came from Sideshow, this is the Sideshow R2, was way too clean. It is dirty, but it's not Dagobah dirty. R2 Dirt 2, we got to get him to look like this. So you could dab just brown paint on and that would be okay, but much better what I did is I took that melted styrene. This is what that styrene stuff looks like that you fill the joints, the Bondo type stuff, and I just dabbed it in. I would refer back and forth to the first photo I had there, the movie still, and see where the mud was really thick, especially around his feet and that part on the abdomen there. So you end up with this type of effect here, which you can't see real well because it's white on white. But as you start brushing in with the layers of paint, from dark brown, lighter browns, even some dark greens mixed in there, just kept layering in, some dark gray, almost charcoal grays, and eventually you get to this effect here. Now, comparing it back and forth, AB with the original, we've got a Dagobah R2D2. Lastly, we're bringing in the base. Once again, is the Foamular pink purple that I used in the Avengers thing. I just measured out a square of it, roughed up all of the surface until you got this type of effect here. Then once again, you want to set everything up. The Kleenex box is so that I knew approximate height of what Yoda needed to be to look right with Luke's sight line, to where he's not aiming down, he's not aiming too high, but just ballpark of what the sight line was going to be there. And then we started the wireframe of the trees. This is much like the wireframe of the explosion in the Avengers, except for instead of using polyfill, this time I'm using a sculpting clay. So this Sargent Sculpted is, it actually dries out and cracks, which is undesirable, you know, if you were sculpting a figure or something. I'm not sure exactly how you prevent it from doing that, but in a tree it was great. It actually makes the broken bark look, accents that. So just pushed it into the wireframe until it got the entire thing covered. Then come back and, much like sculpting the bricks in the Avengers one, you just cut in for the bark patterns. Then you tear it all down to start painting again. As always, start with your darkest coat first, your undercoat, a very dark brown on the tree trunks. Paint everything solid. On the base, it was a either black or very dark gray, and then keep layering in your lighter colors. Keep going with your lighter colors. The base has, oh goodness, light gray, charcoal gray, some green, some brown, a little bit of everything. Then store-bought foliage, like moss type stuff that I got online, Amazon. Next up, if you look in photos of Dagobah, there are leaves and leaves and leaves and leaves. So this is the way we did it. You have this hole punch type device that you can buy. I think I got it on Etsy, that punches out the shape of leaves. So you literally take it to a real leaf that you would find in the yard and punch out leaves and punch out leaves and punch out leaves and punch out leaves. Two people, we did this for hours. I don't know how many leaves are in this final photo here, but it took a long time. So, but the end effect is pretty amazing once you scatter them around. And here we have the final display. I added some polyfill fog around the base of it to give the impression of the fog that rolls through Dagobah. as you see in the background. The background photo is actually the still where Yoda is walking, where you see him full frame, and I just photoshopped him out of the picture. And here you will see my original reference frame from the scene once again. And here is the same angle of my diorama. So I hope you've enjoyed the second part of the room tour as I'm going through my dioramas. This morning as I was editing a video and looking at the photos of the actual scene and the same angle there, I was like, that looks pretty good. I was actually pleasantly surprised. So very rewarding to finish something and see what you have in your mind, come into 3D, three-dimension physical world. So hope you enjoyed the vid again, and if you enjoy what I do, please hit that like, sub, and notification bell. Follow me on Instagram at half-assed reviews, and until then, I'll catch you next week.